Okay, the NFL Big Data Bowl 2024 finalists were announced like 2 weeks ago, and my team and I we were fortunate enough to be selected as runners up. So I thought I'd give my thoughts on the competition and maybe some advice on maximizing benefit and enjoyment of competing in the Big Data Bowl. So the number one piece of advice I can give is treat it like a simulation of working for a sports team. I assume most people that have competed in this competition have seen the movie Moneyball and were most likely as inspired by it as I was. So my first bullet point here is pretend to be Jonah Hill or Peter Brand, the character he plays from Moneyball. I think that'll keep things in perspective. Number one, the perspective I'm talking about is making sure you're having an impact. And it's not just a data science competition; it's a football data science competition. So helps you keep that in perspective. It'll also help you have fun with it because a lot of us won't ever get the chance to work for a sports team, and it's a very selective, hard to break into industry. So this is the most realistic, best data that's openly available, and it's the closest thing to working for a sports team. And if you treat it like that, so that's my number one piece of advice. Number two, I would say work with a team. You could do this solo, but I think if you're trying to maximize long-term benefit and have the most fun with it, then working with a team is probably the best way to do that. And touching back on what I just said about simulating working for a sports team, if you were to work for a sports team, you're going to be working with people on your team. It's not just going to be you solo, coming up with an idea. So I think that helps add some realism to the simulation. It also gives checks and balances on project direction. You might have a great idea and start working on it, and then realize it's not the right idea. So having people around you, being honest with you on whether an idea or a step in the project is good or bad, super beneficial. I had the most fun with pair programming, so hopping on a Google Meet with my teammates and working together through a problem rather than just giving up tasks and checking in later. It made, because a lot of writing code in general, and especially this competition, is very difficult. So there's a lot of like drudgery, so trying to fix something for like hours on end. And if you're on the phone with somebody when that happens, it's a great moment. So pair programming is something I would encourage everyone to do if you're working with a team on this. It also brings, everybody theoretically on your team likes football enough to compete in this, but they also bring their own perspective and experience. So you kind of have a larger knowledge base to draw from of non-football ideas to apply to football. Like one of our teammates found our idea was based on a biomimetic search algorithm. So biomimetic is something that imitates something in nature. So it was like a swarm algorithm that he found, and it was pretty interesting. So we ran with it, and obviously it worked out. But I never would have found that on my own. So it helps that everybody has their own ideas and perspective. You also get a long-term benefit even if you don't place or get runner-up or whatever, because you'll connect with these people. It's kind of like a networking thing. They'll know that you're good at data science and interested in it, and you might make some friends along the way too. So, third piece of advice: less data science, more football. A lot of submissions I saw had some EDA in it, exploratory data analysis. The people that are judging this they work for NFL teams or for the NFL as data scientists or analysts. So they've already done the EDA. It's not super interesting. Obviously, when you're working through the data, you're going to have to get a feel for it and do that EDA, but it's not necessary to submit it. And it kind of just takes up your word count and visualization count for no reason. I would not opine too much on if you go a machine learning route on your model metrics like mean squared error development process. Do some of that, but it really should be bottom line. What is this doing for me, rather than like look how accurate this model is. Um, you should be asking yourself at all times: would an NFL coach or GM care about what I'm saying here? And I think that'll help keep the perspective tight as well. I wrote here you should explain just enough to turn your black box into a gray box. So what I mean by that is a lot of machine learning to people is a black box. You have an input, and then something happens, and then there's an output. you should shed a little bit of light on that, but you don't want to go into explaining like basic machine learning, data science concepts. It should be, again, would an NFL GM or coach care about what I'm saying here? And then lastly, I would suggest you spend some time thinking about how to sell your idea. We branded our submission was called Pasta. That's the metric we came up with, and that's something catchy. It stands for Path Analysis via Swarm Tackle Accuracy. So that's something it's catchy. It's easy to remember. So spend some time like branding your idea and selling your idea in the submission. And lastly, last piece of advice is reduce your scope. This tracking data is awesome and it's very cool, but you can't solve all of football. Nobody will ever be able to solve all of football. So don't try to create like a crazy catch-all metric. I wrote that catch-all metrics work for business, like things like profit, um, you know, revenue, things like that. But sports, the low-hanging fruit is if you're attacking like a specific subsection of the sport. So rather than try to create an overarching defensive metric, we focused on secondary limiting yards after the catch. There's things like EPA that are sort of a catch-all metric, but those have already been figured out. So I think you make the most impact by going a little bit smaller on your scope. And again, relating to the simulation of pretending you're working for a sports team, if you were working for a sports team, day one you get hired, you're not going to be setting their draft strategy. They're going to have you working on something very small. So, those small impacts theoretically will work up to a big impact. You'll get the opportunity to maybe, contribute to something big in the organization. But if you don't prove yourself with the small impacts first, then you'll never get the shot. So um, that's all I got for Big Datable, and I appreciate you guys watching.